Hi, I'm Metta Spencer, and today I get to talk with a very dear old friend, Ignat Kalinin, who's in Moscow. And he and I need to get caught up. I've known him almost all his life, and we need to get caught up about what's going on in Russia, especially since a few days ago, the constitution of Russia was changed in order to enable Putin to basically stay in power almost the rest of his life. So, hi, Ignat. How are you?
Hi, Metta. I'm fine. Thank you. Nice to see you. Uh, well, what can I say? We still living the hangover from this kind of uh, what they called uh, plebiscite about the amendments that were made into Russian constitution. This the procedure itself was not constitutional. All the amendments were put in one pack, and it's 70 amendments, I think, or maybe more. Sometimes I think it's 17, but maybe it's like 210. But the only one that makes sense there is that Putin can run again for two terms of 6 years, making him eligible to rule up until 2036.
Are you working?
Yes, for Yabloko.
Okay. And
I
what
have
is your
to.
role?
My official role is that I'm press secretary of Moscow State Duma fraction. We have like four deputies in Moscow State Duma. It's like 1/10 of all the deputies there, and I kind of have to organize work and produce informational support to what they are doing. But because of quarantine, because everyone is still locked down, because party for themselves is they say we're staying at home. Because of that, I still hadn't chance to organize this work correctly. But mostly I'm helping the leader of this fraction, Maxim Kruglov, who's the young guy, my age, very smart, and his idea is to make a new deal for Moscow. You know, like Roosevelt had New Deal for the US.
Yeah. Okay.
To have a new deal for Moscow, because we pay 10 billion only from our salaries a year. Moscow, $10 billion. Things we have rains falling every day now, and huge fleets of these cargo machines, cargo trucks with sprinklers, and they go around and sprinkler while the rain is falling. It's every time. Well, it's in the budget. They have to do it. There is a GPS in every one of them, so they have to waste the water they have in there, so to refill and then go again, and it's this kind of when on the street walk, right? You don't use asphalt,
No?
no,
Use
but
bricks.
bricks. Yeah, I don't know how to call it. Bricks for walking. I don't know. Yeah, so they change them every year.
Why?
Because it's someone's business,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
it's pandemic, and the you know that they declared that it's finished, just for everyone to go. Well, couple of in the middle of June they said it's okay. Now it's okay because because we had to go and vote for this stuff that they decided about constitutions. So everyone around goes and goes again, and the medics, they never had any normal compensation for what they did, and there was no, well, some, but in proportion to what kind of hellish work they had to do, they never had any. They had, but instead of this, we're starting again. Our Moscow mayor has this idea for carnivals. Every month or every 2 months, there is a new carnival in Moscow. Something for jam carnival, or Eastern carnival, or so they change decoration everywhere, and they put some, well, all that kind. So Maxim, the guy with which one I'm working with, he says, okay, it maybe worked when we had this huge economy, huge finance, but it's dead now. There is no money, there is no oil. Pandemic has killed all our small businesses. You know that we never received, no one received any spare money. I don't know. No restaurants, no laundries, no, not at all, zero. So it also dying, right?
Well, what's happening in terms of the infection rate? If you open things up, I mean, the U.S. is now finding out they opened up too soon. Everybody knew they were doing it too soon, but they went ahead and Trump wanted it. And now everybody's dying, you know. A lot of, they're having the highest, spread of the disease, the greatest number of new cases ever. Every day. It's like 50,000 new cases. And now it's too late to really stop it. I was watching last night, I think it was even, I don't know, CNN or something. They were saying, you know, if we'd done the intervention earlier, where we could trace the contacts that every sick person has contacts with somebody, so you trace those and you catch them right away, then that's the best way to put a stop to it. But now, when you're talking about 40,000 or 50,000, too late.
From Moscow, it went all the way around Russia. And so no one believes. It's like in China. No one believes what's going on in there.
I've heard that people don't believe the number of deaths.
You know what they did? They compared at some point, a couple of weeks ago, they compared the ratio of death at all to the ratio of death among the medics. And in Russia, it was like death among the medics was like 10 times as high as anywhere else, as in Italy and everywhere. So it means that probably the real ratio of death in Russia is also 10 times more than.
Yeah.
Staying inside, for example, for me, it was very hard to return to the city. I really couldn't left this flat. I couldn't left it for like 2 weeks. I really couldn't understand why, what to do there, how to see those people. I became so socially, I don't know, inadaptive. Maybe it's something has to do it. Why? You're feeling great, right?
Yeah.
Me too. But actually, you kind of know that sometime you'll have to go out, see real people, smile with them, hug them. I don't know. And I don't know how to overcome it. How do I like my job? Well, I told you about one piece of it, right? uh, general one that I have to do. It's about New Deal for Moscow, for wasting money, not for wasting money, but for turning it to medics and doctors. And we had this catastrophic reform of medicine for the past 5 years, when in the whole Russia, they've cut hospitals in half, and they've merged some. So they've tried to cut spendings on the medicine, and now it has its repercussions, right? Normally, although Russian system of healthcare was actually founded and built for this kind of emergency situation. Yes, for global war, helping people from radiation, atomic war, biological war, and so on. So we have the foundations were still there, but the day-to-day medicine is very undermined, and doctors who working there, they say we don't have time to do our primary job, because we have to fill so many documents about who and how and when and what time and so on, and it takes all our time, and they are very demotivated. So what we propose for Moscow is, like, I don't know, for example, turning money into there. Also, we have building problem. There are buildings everywhere. They development. They build and build and build and build, and we propose to set up a new tax for any new building higher than 5 stories, and that can be sent to, I don't know, treatment of children who are extremely ill, orphaned diseases, for example, and so on. That kind of. And my second line of work is this digital rights part of thing, because we there is, you probably know. I didn't know. I did a lot of research before because of this work. But you probably know that in San Francisco, police and any other governmental agencies are forbidden to use artificial intelligence to recognize faces on the camera, and all this kind of stuff. And in Russia, they only during this exactly this quarantine period, lockdown period, they forced through State Duma like 4 or 5 different acts that kind of cement the idea that everything about you, all your virtual profile, where you go, where your taxi takes you, where you leave it, whom you're calling, leave alone that they can actually read every your messages and hear every your telephone calls, your purchases. How much do you drink? How much do you go to bars and, I don't know, massage? And also face recognition everywhere. So you can actually, it started with what? You remember they started to put cameras.
Yeah.
Many years ago, and then they put a small card nearby. It says you're under CCTV. No one said that CCTV with face identification, right? Same with cars. They know where your car goes, where you stops, and so on. And now they've merged it into one big, they call it national register of physical identities.
This
So
really becomes the worst nightmare of all, isn't it? The
it's
potential there for the outcome of that is just horrendous.
it's an atomic bomb of individual use.
Right.
You know, you can drop.
But the
And
worst is,
let me finish.
yeah.
Let me finish. The face recognition for children in schools program is officially the one that is now being adopted. It's called Orwell.
What? Orla.
Orwell, like 1985, 84.
Orwell. They're calling it that.
Yes,
I mean, who's calling it that?
They gave it in
They themselves gave it that name.
yes, yes.
They're not even ashamed of it. Oh my goodness. I mean, that's what I would call it, you know. But imagine if they're officially calling it that.
So what Yavlinsky called upon is to try and make some civil institute that could, I don't know, whistleblow at some time on this. So this is something that I'm trying to, with the help of some other people, to build up, and maybe. And the thing is, there is not a lot of awareness about this. It's all being done in a very, very, very murky way. No one tells. It's not a big thing.
I've got a deal for you. First of all, there is a good reason for using cell phones to track people for the sake of actually following. If you're actually doing the tracking for the pandemic, people who got it, there's an argument to be made that this is a very helpful thing. But everybody knows that it's double-edged sword. If you do that, then how are you going to stop doing it when the pandemic is over and go back to civil privacy issues? And I think I don't really have any sense of privacy. I mentioned that to you before. I will tell anybody almost anything about myself. Or if you tell me your secrets, I'll tell everybody your secrets. I just don't have any sense of privacy at all. I've been building this thing called Project Save the World, which is really basically just a website, but also these interviews that I do. But the website is to be a meeting place for activists concerned about 6 of the worst global threats. Obviously, war and weapons, obviously global warming. Now, of course, pandemics. We already had pandemics, but now people understand why. Famine, which it hasn't happened on a big scale before, but that's a possibility. And radioactive contamination, things like another Chernobyl or Fukushima or all these other things where we aren't even being told the truth about the amount of exposure that people are getting to radioactive contamination from other sources. So we have a project on that. Then there's cyber attacks. Now, cyber attacks, we think of it as cyber war, where one country will try to knock out the electric grid of another country, or knock out all its satellites, or something that's a real actual war. But part of the cyber risk consists of things like artificial intelligence, hacking, and deliberate manipulation of collecting data and information about people through digital means, and making it into a form that can be used to control the population. And to me, that is at least as dangerous. Now, some of these threats, we have social movements that work to combat them. There are peace groups all over the world. But most of these other four global threats are, they're run by people who have a local organization, if any. They might have a local protest movement. For example, there are certainly people in Russia who have a concern about radioactive contamination. The people around Mayak who've been exposed that way. The people in Kazakhstan around Semipal.
But you know that in Moscow, they're building a new highway above a radioactive, well, I don't know how you call it, where they put down radioactive waste.
Wow.
So there will be cars going right above it every time. And we are fighting it in here in Moscow. It's not very far from my father's house.
Oh yeah. Oh my goodness. Very interesting. Well, now that's a new one, but we have to. So anyway, the thing is that there are local organizations that work on local problems mostly, but there is no international, transnational organization of groups that are concerned about radioactive hazards. And so what my job is to organize one. So we were going to have a meeting of some Japanese activists who were coming to the Non-Proliferation Review Conference this spring, and there were 45 of them were coming to Toronto. And we were going to, while they were here, we were going to have a meeting and then have Zoom calls to people, invite people all over the world who are also working on radioactive issues, and then form a network, a global network of people who are at least in touch with each other or have a place. So my website will be a place where all of the people who are worried about radioactive contamination will have a comments column, be able to post an events listing of anything that they have, including online events, and share information. Now, I want to do the same with some of these other threats where there's no global network of NGOs or civil society organizations or even experts, researchers that work on these. We need to put all this together and make it possible to have a place where people can meet and talk about these issues freely. And that's what my website is for. In my opinion, at the moment, there is no social movement of people concerned about the risks of cyber risks. The population doesn't think that there's any way to regulate or control the internet. There's a whole domain of effort that needs to go into creating awareness of the social risks of the way information is going to be controlled and used by people not in the public interest and not in our own personal well-being. So it sounds like you guys in Yabloko are on to a risk, a problem that is not just a local problem. You're not just talking about Moscow. We're talking about this is the kind of thing that's happening all around the world, and nobody's protesting in any effective way. There's no social movement. There are no organizations formed.
There's no awareness. There is no awareness.
I want to work with you guys. I want to give you and Yavlinsky a page in my website where we can say, this is the place for us to create awareness of this, not only to have a discussion of it, but to publicize it, to send it out, to reach out, to try to generate concerns so that people form organizations or NGOs and start demanding but working together on it. We can use my website as a tool with you to organize an effort to create a social movement demanding responsible management of information of the kind, this digital stuff that you're talking about. Can we work together?
Sure. I'm sure, just not probably starting from today,
No.
because it's also boiling inside, and when we have a product, we can start speaking about it. We were being the part of a member of ALDE. We were going to
What's
push.
that?
It's a European Alliance of Liberal Democratic Parties. You probably.
No.
It's the EU thing. It's the liberal democratic parties of different European countries who unite in one union. So probably we were thinking about moving it through them also. But first we have to make it here, to make it big here. And that's something that I'm mostly preoccupied right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that's your work.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
That's something that you always wanted me to do.
Well, I've loved what you're doing. You're wonderful. I adore you. I'm proud of you. I claim credit. You're my little book. Okay. What I'm doing is making lists of NGOs around the world who are working on some of these other global threats besides the war and weapons thing or the global warming, either famine, pandemics, radioactive contamination, or cyber attacks. And in English, I have joined about 250 social groups, and they range on Facebook. They range from everything from using biochar and how to be a farmer, what kind of fertilizer to use this year on this particular type of soil, all the way to how to save democracy, or all these various things. And many of them are very sophisticated. And so I was thinking, now there must be in Russia, there must be a lot of other people who have social groups that are also pretty sophisticated, and where they have these discussions online. So I want to begin to make contacts between Russian groups and the rest of the world that I'm trying to do. So, but when we looked at the social groups on Facebook last night, they were junk. Frankly, the Russian social groups were mostly weird, they were not serious people who had real conversations about anything. And I don't know, maybe it was just the luck of the draw. We looked under pandemics, and instead of finding people who are experts on epidemiology talking about the new research findings, or what to do about trying to enforce people wearing masks or anything like that. No, there was nothing really about pandemics. It was all about mystical things or right wing. Mostly, I would say half of them were by people who didn't believe there was such a thing as COVID, or they were arguing that you don't need to keep social distance and things like that. So it was junk. If we did this thing, if we included the thing about cyber issues that you're talking about, looks like you've got something already going. On the other hand, I realized that there's some risk in doing that. Now, I made a video with a woman named Nadezhda Kutepova. Do you know her name? She was born in Mayak, in that town starts with an O. She says every family there has at least one member who's died of radioactive poisoning because of working in this nuclear facility. It's the biggest place in Russia where the reprocessing goes on and stuff, and they've contaminated everything. It's not too far from Lake Karachay, and they've dumped all that water, all that poison and everything, and everybody's, they all die of it. But she said they're used to it. They always, they don't even question it. And so she started an NGO where she was working to defend the rights of people who were poisoned by the contamination. And she lost most of the cases, but nevertheless, 5 years ago, she had to flee. She has 4 children. She's about in her 40s. She has 4 kids, and she had to flee to Paris because she was being intimidated and she knew that she was going to be charged with being a spy. Then there's another woman that I'm trying to reach named Yelena Vasilyeva. She was in Murmansk, and she has had to immigrate to Finland. The thing is that I want to do some talk shows with some of these people, as I did with Nadezhda. But mostly I want to get in touch with people who can put me in touch with other experts doing research or people who are seriously knowledgeable and concerned as citizens about either pandemics, radioactive contamination, or now maybe the cyber issue of spying on people and controlling information. There. Now, what do I do?
Well, first of all, I've never heard anything about groups concerned about pandemics because probably it was never an issue for Russians.
Well, but you're not alone in that, because there are no social movements about people that have existed to now by people worried about pandemics. Bill Gates has been trying for 10 years to tell us that this is coming, you better do something, but he couldn't get anybody interested. So it's all been considered a public health issue handled entirely by professionals. So the Department of Public Health is responsible for maintaining well-being, but then the government, they may or may not pay attention to it. And as you say, they're cutting back expenditures, Trump shut off even the little bit that Obama had done to try to prepare for a pandemic. So there's no social movement, but we have to create one.
Okay, but look, it's really, first of all, as I told you, Russian healthcare system was built to withstand pandemics. I remember, there was an anthrax epidemic in Siberia some 50s or 60s, and it was very, very, very fast and efficiently subjugated. So it was like 10 deaths or something. All those Ebola kind of epidemic, they never get to us. I don't know why. Probably because of the weather conditions or something. I think it's the first.
Yeah, but the Ebola comes out of, I think it's transmitted mostly from chimpanzees or, animals in Africa. So there are no proper animals in Russia for it.
Yeah, well, maybe. So it was never an issue.
Yeah.
So there was never a reply.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe now after this, what happens? Maybe some epidemiologist. It actually we found out during this lockdown period, there are like 30 professional epidemiologists in a 140 million.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Now I have to say this:
know how it works, what to do, how to use, and how we actually were doing. We were first using the preset instructions from Soviet era, right? Of how to contain, and also communicating with Italy and France and China on what was going there. So that's how we were doing. And probably, maybe after this ends, after we get the vaccine, there will be some medics who will come out and say we need some popular awareness of this thing. We have to get ready for this, because it never, there is a saying in Russia: before roasted chicken clicks you in the head, you don't do it. You don't do anything. Well, before something terrible happens, before something unexpectedly terrible happens, you're not doing anything. So
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah.
But let me say this: even though you're right, I know that some of the interesting theories or research or methods of treatment or experimental things that are not too well established yet, but are still important, have come from Russians. I've come across at least 2 references to important things that should be pursued. And I can't tell you exactly anymore what the discoveries were, but one was by some guy who's immigrated to the US and now lives in LA. And the other
so it comes from LA, not from Russia.
No, but I think he may have brought his idea from Russia, or developed it there. The other is a couple, a man and a wife, who discovered something that's important. So it isn't, the point is, I think if there is knowledge to be had from researchers who maybe haven't published it widely because nobody's been interested, but we could publish it and share these articles on our website where we have the comments column, and we could paste them in and show, that there's something to discuss there. Then any kind of contact that we can make because I want this to be an absolutely worldwide movement of activists and researchers, specialists or lay people who are concerned citizens, who are working on some of these global issues. My notion is that many of these global threats, several of them, fit together causally. So it's easier to solve the whole thing as a package than to try to solve them separately. In fact, you can't solve them separately because they're connected. And so what you're doing about, for example, a platform for a New Deal for Moscow is exactly what we're doing with the idea of a platform for survival. 25 different proposals that, if they were all enacted, would solve all 6 of these global threats, or at least bring them very much under control, much less risk than they are now. So that's my theory, is that it's a system that we're working with, and therefore we need to have everybody in the world aware of it as a system. We have to reach out in every direction. And we have to invite everybody to share on the same space so that they can see the connections, maybe from I have one page for this and one page for that, and different platforms many different comments columns where you can discuss things. But while you're there, you can see some of the others too and how they're linked. So anyway, that's what I think would be. I want to reach whoever knows anything or cares anything about it in Russia, and not these poor benighted souls who were, on that pandemic's those social groups that were called pandemics last night. It didn't work.
Russian Facebook is a pile of shit. Don't even recover it. And it especially has been made this way because it is considered a danger. So they fill it up with all kinds of trash.
Okay, Live Journal and the Contact. And I don't know anything about those. And we looked last night at Live Journal, but I couldn't.
No, forget it. Our real social political thought has moved into YouTube right now. So
Oh.
Yeah, the most interesting stuff, the most professional stuff is out there. So I'll send you a reference to one of like 15 interesting channels that are made by former TV workers who were ousted by the regime. Well, because of censorship, they couldn't find themselves in the new patchwork of TV channels, and they roamed for like 5-6 years before YouTube actually started a new revolution for Russia. So it's now everything is on YouTube. So I'll send you one as a
Send me all 15.
well, not all 15. I'll just send you one and about actually epidemics.
Okay.
And about radiation is a bit different thing. There is this I think group of people who were at Chernobyl and they have some NGO, but they're quite murky.
There's another woman named Kate Brown who wrote a book about the effects of Chernobyl on people, not only in Russia, but also in Ukraine and Belarus, and I don't know. I've read enough to know that there are a lot of, we're talking about thousands and thousands of deaths from cancer and stuff. And I mean, the thing is that the WHO has systematically lied and suppressed information. There's no question about it. They have a deal with the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, or whatever it's called, and that there is there's sort of I think a rule that they're not allowed. The WHO is not allowed to say or do anything about radiation. They have to get clearance with the IAEA. And of course, the IAEA has its own conflict of interest because they have two totally conflicting mandates. One is to promote nuclear power and peaceful nuclear technology. And that's a duty of theirs as part of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, that they're obliged, every country is obliged to help other countries get nuclear power and nuclear treatment of disease and things like that. But at the same time, they're supposed to suppress and work for nuclear disarmament. Well, those two things don't go together because, plutonium is the byproduct of every reactor in the world. You can't use a reactor without making plutonium, and therefore you're going to have the ingredients for a nuclear weapon anyway. And especially if you reprocessing, if you actually separate the plutonium from the other stuff, then it's right there for anybody who wants to come and get it. So anyway, long-winded way of saying that is an issue for me. And there certainly are people that I want to be able to be in contact with, although the question is, if what you're saying about the suppression of dissent is accurate or predictively accurate, then talking to these people could get them in trouble. And I don't even know, I mean, Nadezhda talks to them. She's in contact with people in her hometown all the time. But, she had to flee the country. And if I talk to them as, a foreign agent, I could be jeopardizing them. I don't know. I have to watch out. And I don't know how to be realistic. You? No.
My position right now is to wait and watch and do my job as what I'm doing. But I have to understand what is going on in Russia at all before the end of the year, because it will show. Something will show. This way, the other, it can happen anything.
And he easily won on that constitutional thing. I mean, I'm assuming that even cheated, that he would, there was a general acceptance of it.
You are being misled as everyone else. It wasn't an election. It wasn't an election. The procedure in Constitution says that well, among all numerous mistakes done in this, for example, they've taken 70 amendments and put them as one, and said, do you support it or do you not? And among those 70 amendments was, if it's okay for Putin to start again, which was the only one, well, one of this thing. It was the head of Central Election Committee, a week, 10 days before the 1st of July, said it's already done, because under the Constitution, it's any amendment is incorporated, is considered running if most of the regional constitutions vote yes, and both chambers of parliament will vote yes. So the thing that for people, it was just part of the show. And they've lifted up the lockdown for people to go out and enjoy and get some more of the COVID from around. And they've been voting outside for a week. They were voting outside in the trunks of the cars, in the woods, they've made something called electronic elections, which is completely murky, misty. You cannot understand what is going there. Who is voting, who is not voting. They've made every person who is working for the state go and vote. It was like, I don't know, probably next to Crimea annexation, in terms of how aggressively and unlawfully it was done. Mm-hmm. So you cannot say that he won by some marginal. It's something that they wrote down. There was no shame at all, no shame, not on any level. So it wasn't like in Moscow what they had, that it was like 54 against and 44 yes. But it's in Moscow because they made people come there. The people who work for the state, they were almost obliged to, and there were soldiers, and then so on and so on. But even so, people who came to the polling stations, and then there is like another 40 who didn't come.
So, and presumably then the rest of the country is very different from Moscow.
Not so.
No?
No. I don't think so. It's just you wait for some tipping point. Something just bad goes on and it all collapses. We were speaking with someone, and he said it's like our part of our cultural code. We don't change power easily. It's all comes in the end. In 1917, it was rumors that there is not enough bread in Petrograd, in St. Petersburg. And the revolution started. How, who, why? There wasn't enough bread. It was just at some tipping point. And it also comes to starvation, or not starvation, but real problems in economy and in this thing. And I think they're coming.
It's not just there, but because of the climate thing, if the pandemic is like a drop in the bucket compared to the dangers and hazards to humankind that will result from the climate change. It's going to be way worse. And I mean, we're going to lose a lot of it. I mean, when you think about it, what proportion of the human population has been killed by COVID, not much. There was, I believe, the worst pandemic in history was in Russia. And I think Russia lost about a third of its population, but that was many years, I can't remember when. I've heard that they lost, that was the worst. You lose about a third of the population. And in Europe, half of the Black Death killed a lot of folks. So, but now, I mean, COVID is nothing compared to some of these really, even the 1918 flu epidemic. COVID is easy compared to that. But, now we got to look for the effects of global warming. And I don't know whether it's possible to prevent it. I think it's probably too late, but we can do some things. We have to do everything we can. Anyway, people simply don't want to hear it. And I don't know.
Are there any researches on how lockdown influenced global warming?
Yeah, there was an article about it in, I think my friend Doug Saunders wrote a piece for the Globe and Mail maybe 2 months ago, where he said, because people couldn't go out, the use of their cars and things like that meant that the reduction of CO2 emissions was extraordinary, and the air was clean and you could go outside and breathe, and it wasn't, no smog or whatever. But he said there was no place in the world where that was enough, that even the most extreme changes in CO2 emissions had not made as much difference as would be required to actually stop the global warming. So we have to do so much more, and people are simply not anywhere near aware of how catastrophic it's going to be. Anyway, that's a whole different conversation for another day.
Right after what happened, and the results were shown by the Central Election Committee, a lot of force actions by the force structures, mostly police and also FSB, were happened to some prominent people. For example, Petr Verzilov, who is probably known to you by Pussy Riot. He's the mastermind of Pussy Riot, and he invented the thing. He was, first of all, before the election, the so-called election, he was jailed for swearing in the street. And now then he was now he's out from the jail, but he has to face another trial for something I don't even follow anymore, because it's something that's happening on every time. And also a friend of mine, not really a friend of mine, close close colleague, I'd say. Ivan Safronov, he was taken to FSB on the charges of high treason because he allegedly, from 2012, he was working for Czech intelligence service that is, of course, being a puppet of CIA. He is one of the most prominent investigation reporters in a sphere of military-industrial complex. So he really had a lot of connections, and probably he had some inner knowledge, but that always was the part of the game. And now it looks like the rules of the game are changing. So he's being taken for what before, it's like since 2012 he was doing it, but only in 2020, after the election, after the new order is installed, he's being taken in jail. His girlfriend, who is also well, she's also, they both worked for Kommersant, which was a very, well, probably the number one newspaper in Russia before it was bought by Kremlin-biased oligarch, and they changed their editorial policy. She's running a small online media outlet, and probably having it's been founded from the West. Maybe it's part of this USAID program, or maybe something else. It's not political completely, but she was asked to give some testimonies, yes, about him and so on. And they both, of course, all their computers and phones were taken away. And he's facing up to 20 years in prison. And the rules of the games are changing. I don't really know. I don't really understand to what extent, and nobody does yet. So we have to now watch and see what is going on. But it's mostly, we at Partia Yabloko, of which I'm a proud member of, we openly call it a constitutional revolt. I don't know how to call it. What happened?
Well, when it came to actually counting the ballots, I agree. You're saying that the whole setup was fraudulent and rotten from beginning to end. But what proportion, according to their official count, what was the outcome? It passed strongly, didn't it? What proportion of the population voted to adopt these constitutional amendments?
I don't really know numbers, really. I never thought. It's maybe 75 or 78 or 79, I don't know. But you think in a paradigm of working institution. This is not a working institution. This has nothing to do. You know, I've had this, in 2016, my party sent me to this small camp in Germany that is set by a Liberal Democratic Party of Germany. And there were people like me, my age, are from around the world, mostly Latin America, but some Hungary, Czech, I don't know, Philippines. And they were, it's the problem of all liberal parties in the world now. They very, very marginal. They promote virtuous values that are not very popular and not very populistic. So they try to get this small part of the parliament and maybe say something from there. Same problems with everyone. And they were discussing how do they build a strategy to go around and maybe win here and maybe win there and maybe get into the parliament, maybe bigger their share a bit, 1%, 2%. And I sat there understanding that, I don't know, Argentina or Honduras or Costa Rica, their institutions are actually working. They actually can do something about it. In Russia, the election institution is destroyed totally. And this procedure that was in plebiscite, as I call it, it wasn't even part of this destroyed institution of election. We have to understand, we have 90,000 basic committees, election committees, where people come and vote, right? 90,000 around the Russia. Mm-hmm. And then there are higher level and higher level and higher level. So it makes about, let's say, 100,000 people, true people, independent people, very skilled people, very outrageous and bold people, to man each of that committee and check what is going on there and how the vote is being done. 100,000, it's 10 divisions. It's an army. Okay, you can like fill up half of them, 50,000, but it's really impossible. In Moscow, on the top of this movement, we have, I don't know, 3,000.
Mm. Well, my friend, I used to pity Russia, but honestly, I now pity the US just as much. I was just talking to you yesterday about if I had to choose between being ruled by Trump or being ruled by Putin, I honestly don't know which I would choose. Unfortunately, some of the democracies have gone down the tubes too, so badly that it's a source of real grief for me.
Metta, now, what about being ruled by Trump for 8 years and being ruled by Putin for 36 years? What would you choose?
You're right. Yeah.
Choose smartly. Trump is fine.
Again. Anyway, this has been great fun. Well, fun isn't the word, but it's important and dear to me. Thank you so much.
This conversation is one of the weekly series Talk About Saving the World, produced by Peace Magazine and Project Save the World. Please visit our website at tosavetheworld.ca, where you can sign the Platform for Survival, a list of 25 public policy proposals that, if enacted, would greatly reduce the risk of 6 global threats to humankind. Come back next week for another discussion of a serious global issue.